Her twin son sat in the front row of his wedding waiting to expose what the billionaire CEO hid. The priest's voice echoed through the cathedral like a death knell. If anyone here objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. 500 guests held their breath. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across marble floors. White roses perfumed the air with sweetness that bordered on suffocating. And then a 17-year-old boy stood up from the front row. I object. The gasp that rippled through St. Magdalene Cathedral could have shattered the stained glass windows. Security guards moved forward, but the groom raised his hand to stop them. Wait. The billionaire's voice cracked. Let him speak. The boy's hands trembled, but his voice did not. I object on behalf of Delphine Hartley, the woman you abandoned 17 years ago, the woman who raised your sons alone while you built your empire, the woman your mother told you was dead. Beside him, his twin brother rose. Together they faced the man whose eyes they had inherited, the man who had never known they existed. My name is Jasper Hartley. This is my brother Griffin. And you, Remington Blackwell, are our father. The bride's bouquet slipped from her fingers and scattered white petals across the altar like snowfall. The groom swayed on his feet, and in the third row an elderly woman with pearls around her throat went deathly pale. The twins had waited 17 years for this moment. They had crossed 1,000 miles with nothing but photographs, letters, and the weight of questions that had haunted them since birth. But how did they get here? What secrets had been buried so deep that it took a mother's collapse to unearth them? And what would happen when the truth finally came to light? Before we continue, if stories about second chances and family secrets move you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Cedar Drama. Trust me, you will want to see how this unfolds. Now let me take you back to where it all began. 3 months before the wedding, in a small town called Copper Ridge, Montana, a woman collapsed in her bakery kitchen at 4:30 in the morning. Delphine Hartley had been kneading dough for cinnamon rolls when her body simply gave out. 17 years of 18-hour days. 17 years of raising twin boys alone. 17 years of carrying a secret so heavy it had finally crushed her. The flour dusted her cheeks like snow as she fell. Her hands, still covered in dough, reached for the counter but found only air. She was discovered an hour later by her son Griffin, who had come downstairs for a glass of water and found his mother unconscious on the cold tile floor. Mom, Griffin dropped to his knees beside her. Mom, wake up. Jasper, call 911. Jasper, now. The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. In a town as small as Copper Ridge, everyone knew everyone, and the paramedics had watched these boys grow up. They had bought birthday cakes from this bakery. They had seen Delphine work herself to the bone year after year after year. Exhaustion, the doctors said later. Severe exhaustion compounded by years of physical neglect. Her body had simply surrendered. For the first 3 days, Delphine drifted in and out of consciousness. The twins took turns sitting beside her hospital bed, holding her calloused hands, whispering prayers neither of them fully believed. On the 4th day, she opened her eyes. My boys. Her voice was barely a whisper. My beautiful boys. Mom, you scared us. Jasper leaned forward, his jaw tight with the effort of not crying. The doctor said you have not been taking care of yourself. He said you have been running on empty for years. Delphine managed a weak smile. I had 2 growing boys to feed. Taking care of myself was a luxury I could not afford. That is going to change. Griffin squeezed her hand. We are going to help more at the bakery. We are going to make sure you rest. But even as they made these promises, the twins noticed something in their mother's eyes. A flicker of fear, a shadow of secrets. She recovered slowly. The doctors insisted she stay in the hospital for observation, and for the first time in their lives, Jasper and Griffin found themselves alone in their small apartment above the bakery. It was Griffin who suggested they look for the insurance documents. Mom has never been organized with paperwork, he said, pulling open drawers in her bedroom. If something happens, if she needs long-term care, we need to know what we are dealing with. Jasper nodded, rifling through a stack of papers on her desk. You check the closet. I will look through these files. For an hour they searched. They found old tax returns, utility bills from years past, recipes scrawled on napkins, but no insurance documents. Then Griffin's hand closed around something beneath the bed. Jasper. His voice was strange. Come look at this. He pulled out a wooden box, about the size of a shoebox, with a small brass lock keeping it sealed. The wood was worn smooth from years of handling, as if someone had held it often, touched it like a talisman. What is that? Jasper crouched beside his brother. I do not know. But it is locked. The twins exchanged a glance. Their mother had never mentioned this box. In 17 years of living in this apartment, they had never seen it before. "We should not open it." Griffin said the words, but his hands were already searching for something to pick the lock. "If it has insurance information, we need to see it." Jasper found a paperclip on the desk and handed it to his brother. "Do it." The lock was old and gave way easily. Griffin lifted the lid, and both boys leaned forward to see what their mother had kept hidden for so long. Photographs. Dozens of them, some faded with age, others crisp and clear. A young woman with their mother's smile, her hair long and wild, her eyes bright with a happiness they had never seen in person. She was beautiful, radiant, alive in a way that made their hearts ache. And beside her in almost every photo was a man. He was tall with dark hair and gray eyes that seemed to pierce through the camera lens. His smile was crooked, charming, familiar. Jasper picked up one of the photographs with trembling hands. "Griffin," he could barely speak. "This man, he looks like us." Griffin took the photo, studying the face that seemed to stare back at him from a mirror. The jawline, the set of the eyes, the way his hair fell across his forehead. "Who is he?" They dug deeper into the box. Letters, tied with a faded ribbon, a dried rose pressed between pages of a worn Bible, a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines, and at the very bottom, a newspaper clipping from 18 years ago. "Stanford graduate student receives breakthrough research grant." The headline was accompanied by a photograph of the same man from the pictures, younger but unmistakable. The caption read, "Remington Blackwell, doctoral candidate in biochemistry, has been awarded the prestigious Morrison Fellowship for his groundbreaking work in pharmaceutical development." Remington Blackwell. Griffin whispered the name like a spell, like a curse. Jasper was already on his phone, typing the name into a search engine. What he found made his blood run cold. Remington Blackwell, founder and CEO of Blackwell Dynamics. Net worth $14 billion. Philanthropist, visionary, one of the most powerful men in American medicine. And according to every photograph in this box, the man who had once loved their mother. The twins stayed up all night reading their mother's letters. They were not love letters in the traditional sense. They were letters written to someone who would never read them. Letters full of pain and questions, and a love that had curdled into grief. "Dear Remington," the first one began. The date at the top was from 17 years ago, just weeks after the twins were born. The babies came today. Twin boys. "I named them Jasper and Griffin after my grandfather and yours. Do you remember telling me about your grandfather Griffin, the one who taught you to fish? I thought you would want your son to carry that name. But I suppose it does not matter what you would have wanted. You made your choice." Jasper's hands shook as he read the words aloud. Griffin sat beside him, silent, his face a mask of controlled emotion. The next letter was darker. "Dear Remington, it has been 3 months. The boys are healthy, thank God. They have your eyes. Every time I look at them, I see you looking back at me. It is a blessing and a curse. I work double shifts at the diner now. My mother watches the boys when she can, but she is getting older. I do not know how I am going to do this. I do not know how I am going to raise 2 children alone, but I will, because you left me no choice." Letter after letter told the story of their mother's struggle, the sleepless nights, the impossible choices between paying rent and buying diapers, the loneliness that crept in like fog and never fully lifted. And then they found the letter that changed everything. "Dear Remington, I know now that your mother lied to both of us. I know she showed you those photographs, the ones she manufactured to make you believe I had been unfaithful. I know she blocked my calls and intercepted my letters. I know she threatened to destroy my life if I ever contacted you again. But I did not know, until today, that she told you I was dead. I ran into Marcus Chen at the grocery store, of all places. He told me he had seen you at a conference 2 years ago, that you had mentioned losing me, that you had grieved, as if I had died, and perhaps in a way I did. The Delphine you knew died the night I drove away from Stanford. But I am still here, Remington. Our sons are still here. And I do not know if you ever deserved to know that. I do not know if I will ever send this letter. But I needed to write it. I needed to put the truth somewhere, even if that somewhere is just a box under my bed." Griffin stood up so abruptly his chair crashed backward. "She lied." His voice was raw. His grandmother. She told him Mom was dead. Jasper's jaw tightened. She did more than that. She manufactured fake evidence. She made him believe Mom cheated on him. She destroyed their relationship on purpose. But why? What did Mom ever do to her? She existed. Jasper's voice was bitter. She was not rich enough or powerful enough or whatever enough, so that woman erased her. The twins sat in heavy silence, processing the magnitude of what they had discovered. Their entire lives had been built on a foundation of lies, not their mother's lies, but lies that had shaped everything. What do we do? Griffin finally asked. Do we tell Mom we found these? Jasper picked up another photograph from the box. Their mother at 22, laughing in the arms of a man who looked at her like she was the center of his universe. First, we find out more, he said quietly. We need to know everything before we decide anything. For the next 2 weeks, the twins became investigators. They researched Remington Blackwell obsessively, reading every article, watching every interview, studying his public image like scientists examining a specimen. What they found was complicated. On paper, Remington Blackwell was a hero. His company had developed affordable cancer treatments that had saved countless lives. He funded children's hospitals across 3 continents. He spoke at universities about the responsibility of wealth and the importance of giving back. But he was also engaged to Cordelia Ashworth, daughter of Senator Marcus Ashworth, one of the most powerful political families in the country. Their wedding was scheduled for the first Saturday in October at St. Magdalene Cathedral, an event that would unite 2 dynasties. He is getting married. Griffin stared at the announcement on his laptop screen. In 6 weeks. Jasper leaned over his brother's shoulder, studying the photograph of Remington and Cordelia. She was beautiful in a polished, perfect way. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a smile that looked rehearsed. That could have been Mom, Jasper said quietly. If that woman had not destroyed everything. What would you do if you discovered your father was a billionaire who never knew you existed? Drop your answer in the comments below. Because these boys were about to make a decision that would change everything, they decided to confront him at the wedding. It was Jasper's idea. Dramatic, risky, possibly insane. But he argued that a private approach would never work. His mother will block us. Jasper paced their small living room. She has probably spent the last 17 years making sure no one from Mom's past can reach him. If we try to go through official channels, we will hit a wall. So we just show up at his wedding. Griffin raised an eyebrow. And do what exactly? We tell the truth. Jasper stopped pacing and faced his brother. In front of everyone. In a room full of witnesses, where his mother cannot spin it, cannot hide it, cannot make it disappear. Griffin was silent for a long moment. And what about Mom? She does not want us anywhere near that family. She has spent our whole lives protecting us from them. She spent our whole lives protecting us from the truth. Jasper's voice was firm. Do you not think we deserve to know our father? Do you not think he deserves to know we exist? What if he is exactly what his mother made him into? What if he is cold and cruel and does not want anything to do with us? Jasper picked up the photograph of their parents, young and in love. Then at least we will know. At least we will have tried. Their mother discharged from the hospital 3 days later. She was weak but improving, and the twins made sure she did not suspect anything. They helped at the bakery before school and after. They made her rest. They smiled and laughed and pretended everything was normal. But at night, they planned. Griffin discovered that a catering company from a neighboring town had been hired for the wedding. With some creative networking and a willingness to work for free, he secured positions for both of them as servers. We will be invisible, he explained to Jasper. Just 2 more faces in the crowd. We can get close, observe, and when the moment is right. When the moment is right, we speak. Jasper finished. We tell everyone what really happened. The night before they left, their mother found them packing. She stood in the doorway of their shared bedroom, her face pale, her eyes full of something they had never seen before. Fear. I know what you found. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I know about the box. The twins froze. Mom. Griffin started, but she held up her hand. I should have told you years ago. She entered the room and sat on the edge of Jasper's bed, her hands folded in her lap like a woman preparing for confession. I should have told you everything, but I was so afraid. Afraid of what that family would do if they knew you existed. Afraid of what it would do to you to know the truth. Jasper sat beside her. Tell us now. And so Delphine told them the story they had pieced together from letters and photographs. But hearing it from her lips made it real in a way nothing else could. She told them about meeting Remington in the Stanford Library, about falling in love with his passion, his brilliance, his crooked smile, about the life they had planned together. She told them about discovering she was pregnant, about the joy that had flooded her heart, about the baby booties she had bought, wrapped in tissue paper ready to give him as a surprise. She told them about Harriet Blackwell's visit, the check, the threats, the way that woman had looked at her like she was garbage to be disposed of, and she told them about the photographs. the fake evidence of an affair that never happened. Remington's face when he confronted her, full of hurt and betrayal. The words he had said that had shattered her heart into 1,000 pieces. The baby is not mine. We are done, Delphine. I never want to see you again. She told them about fleeing Stanford with nothing, about driving for days until she found this small town where no one knew her name, about changing her identity to escape Harriet's reach, about giving birth to twin boys alone in a hospital room, with no one to hold her hand. I thought about telling him. Her voice cracked. So many times I thought about reaching out, but his mother made it clear. She said if I ever tried to contact him, she would destroy me completely. She would take you both away from me. She had the money and the power to do it, so you stayed hidden. Griffin's voice was gentle. You stayed hidden to protect us. Delphine nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Everything I have done has been to protect you. Jasper took his mother's hands in his. We found out that she told him you were dead, that there was a fake death certificate. He thinks you died 17 years ago. Delphine closed her eyes, and a sob escaped her lips. I did not know that. I did not know she had gone that far. The room fell silent, except for the sound of her crying. The twins exchanged a glance, a wordless conversation passing between them. We are still going, Jasper said finally. We have to. Delphine looked up, fear returning to her eyes. Please, please do not do this. That family will crush you. Harriet Blackwell is a monster. She will answer for what she did. Jasper's voice was steel. And he will know the truth. Our father will know that we exist, that you are alive, that everything was a lie. He may not believe you. Then we will make him believe. Griffin spoke now, his quieter voice carrying unexpected weight. We have the letters, Mom. We have the photographs. We have the evidence of what she did. Delphine looked between her sons, seeing Remington in their eyes, their jaws, their stubborn determination. She saw herself too. Her courage, her resilience. I cannot stop you, she finally whispered. You are too much like both of us for that. But please, please be careful. She pulled them both into an embrace, holding them as if she might never let go. If you believe every mother deserves recognition for the sacrifices she makes, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because Delphine Hartley sacrificed everything. And now her sons were about to fight for the truth she had been too afraid to claim. The journey from Copper Ridge, Montana to the city took 14 hours. The twins drove through the night, taking turns at the wheel, the box of photographs and letters secured in the back seat like precious cargo. They did not talk much. There was too much to say, and no words seemed adequate. As the sun rose over the skyline, painting the glass towers in shades of gold and amber, Jasper finally broke the silence. Are you scared? Griffin kept his eyes on the road, terrified. Me too. What if he does not want us? Griffin voiced the fear they had both been carrying. What if we go through all of this and he just rejects us? Jasper was quiet for a moment. Then at least we will know, and at least he will know we exist. That is more than we had yesterday. The catering company met them at their staging area at noon. White vans, pristine uniforms, endless trays of hors d'oeuvres. The twins changed into their server attire and blended seamlessly into the chaos of wedding preparation. The cathedral was even more magnificent than the photographs had suggested. Soaring ceilings painted with angels, stained glass windows depicting scenes of salvation, marble floors that echoed with every footstep, and flowers. White roses everywhere, their fragrance thick and almost overwhelming. This must have cost more than our apartment building, Griffin murmured as they helped arrange champagne glasses. This is his world, Jasper replied quietly. This is the world we were supposed to belong to. They worked through the afternoon, invisible among the dozens of servers and coordinators. They watched the guests arrive, politicians, celebrities, business moguls, names they had seen in newspapers, faces they had seen on screens. And then they saw her. Harriet Blackwell entered the cathedral like a queen surveying her domain. She wore ivory silk and pearls, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her smile sharp as a blade. She moved through the crowd accepting congratulations on her son's behalf, accepting praise for the magnificent event. She looked exactly like her photographs. Exactly like the woman who had destroyed their mother's life. Jasper's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Griffin placed a steadying hand on his brother's arm. Not yet, he whispered. Wait for the right moment. The ceremony was scheduled for 5 o'clock. At 4:30, the twins made their move. They slipped away from the catering staff and found the guest seating chart. Front row, groom's side. 2 empty seats that had been reserved but never claimed. A cousin who had canceled last minute, perhaps. or fate making room for the truth. They took those seats. The other guests glanced at them curiously but said nothing. Two young men in suits, handsome and composed. Perhaps distant relatives. Perhaps family friends. Harriet Blackwell did not look in their direction. She sat across the aisle, on the opposite end of the front row, chatting with a woman dripping in diamonds. But Jasper looked at her. He memorized her face, her mannerisms, the way she laughed at things that were not funny. He catalogued every detail of the woman who had stolen his father from him before he was even born. The processional music began. Remington Blackwell appeared at the altar. He was taller than the twins had imagined, more imposing. 17 years had added distinguished gray to his temples, but his eyes were the same. Steel gray, sharp, intense. Eyes they saw every morning in the mirror. Their father. The word felt foreign and familiar at the same time, a concept they had imagined but never embodied. A ghost made suddenly, shockingly real. Remington stood straight at the altar, every inch the powerful CEO the world expected him to be. But something in his posture seemed stiff, rehearsed, as if he were playing a role in someone else's play. His eyes scanned the crowd as guests settled into their seats. Polite acknowledgments, practiced smiles, and then his gaze reached the front row. He saw the twins. The effect was immediate and devastating. His face went slack. His body stiffened. His eyes widened with something that looked like recognition, like impossibility, like a man seeing ghosts. Griffin felt the weight of that stare like a physical force. Beside him, Jasper held steady, refusing to look away. "Who are you?" Remington's lips moved silently, the question meant for no one but himself. The music shifted. The bride's entrance was imminent. But Remington could not tear his eyes away from the two young men who wore his face. A murmur rippled through the crowd as people noticed the groom's distraction. The wedding coordinator gestured frantically from the side. Cordelia's bridesmaids exchanged confused glances. And then the doors opened, and Cordelia Ashworth began her walk down the aisle. She was stunning, objectively. Her dress was a masterpiece of lace and silk. Her veil trailed behind her like a waterfall. Her smile was camera-ready, perfect for the society pages. But Remington barely looked at her. His eyes kept drifting back to the front row. To the boys with his mother's dimpled chin and his own steel-gray stare. To the impossible possibility standing right in front of him. Cordelia reached the altar. Her father placed her hand in Remington's. The priest began to speak, but none of it registered. Remington moved through the motions mechanically, his mind clearly elsewhere. Stay with me because what happens next changed everything. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the moment of truth. In the front row, Jasper's hand moved to his jacket pocket. The envelope was there, the photographs, the letters. The DNA results they had obtained through a discarded coffee cup and a private laboratory. The truth was ready. They just needed the right moment. The ceremony proceeded with agonizing slowness. Scripture readings, musical interludes, a sermon about love and commitment that felt hollow given the tension crackling through the air. Harriet Blackwell had finally noticed her son's distraction. Following his gaze, she turned to look at the front row of the groom's side. Her face went white. Even from this distance, even after 17 years, she recognized those features. She recognized what the twins represented, the secret she had buried, the truth she had destroyed. Her hand gripped the pew in front of her so tightly her knuckles went bloodless. Griffin saw her reaction and felt a grim satisfaction. She knows who we are. Beside him, Jasper was counting down the minutes. The priest was approaching the most important question of the ceremony. The moment that would change everything. "Dearly beloved," the priest intoned, his voice echoing through the silent cathedral. "If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." The silence stretched. Jasper stood. "I object." The word exploded through the cathedral like a gunshot. 500 heads turned, 500 gasps merged into a single wave of shock. The priest stumbled over his words, mouth hanging open in disbelief. Jasper stood in the front row, his heart hammering against his ribs, but his voice did not waver. "I object." Security guards in dark suits began moving toward him from multiple directions. But before they could reach him, Remington Blackwell raised his hand. "Stop." His voice carried the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. "Everyone stop." The guards froze mid-step. The guests fell into stunned silence. Even the organist's hands hovered motionless above the keys. Remington stepped away from the altar, away from his bride, his eyes locked on the young man who had just shattered his wedding. "Who are you?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but in the profound silence of the cathedral, everyone heard it. Jasper's hands trembled as he reached into his jacket pocket, but his gaze never left his father's face. "My name is Jasper Hartley. This is my brother Griffin." Griffin rose to stand beside his twin, presenting a united front. Two young men with identical features. Two young men who looked exactly like the billionaire standing before them. 17 years ago, Jasper continued, his voice growing stronger. "You were engaged to a woman named Delphine Mercer. She was a pre-med student at Stanford. You met her in the library during finals week. You fell in love with her. You planned a future together." Remington's face had gone the color of ash. His lips parted, but no sound emerged. "She got pregnant." Griffin spoke now, his quieter voice carrying unexpected power. "With us. Twin boys. Your sons." A murmur rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Cordelia Ashworth stood frozen at the altar, her bouquet clutched so tightly the stems were crushing. "This is absurd." Harriet Blackwell's voice cut through the whispers like a blade. She had risen from her seat, her composure cracking but not yet shattered. "Security, remove these young men immediately. They are clearly mentally disturbed. We have proof." Jasper pulled the envelope from his jacket and held it up for all to see. Photographs. Letters. DNA evidence confirming our biological relationship to Remington Blackwell. He turned to face Harriet directly, and his next words were aimed like arrows. "We also have proof of what you did, the lies you told, the evidence you manufactured, the life you destroyed." Harriet's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. Then it was back, smooth as porcelain. "I have no idea what you are talking about." Remington had not moved. He stood between the altar and the front row, suspended between his old life and a truth he had buried 17 years ago. "Delphine." He whispered the name like a prayer, like a wound reopening. "Delphine is. She is dead," Jasper finished for him. "That is what your mother told you, is it not? That she died in a car accident, that the baby died with her." Remington nodded slowly, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "She lied." Griffin stepped closer to his father, close enough to see the devastation blooming across his features. "Our mother is alive. She has been alive this whole time. She raised us alone in a small town in Montana, while you built your empire. She worked 18-hour days just to keep food on our table. She sacrificed everything." Remington turned to face his mother, and the look in his eyes was something between horror and dawning comprehension. "Mother." His voice cracked on the word. "What did you do?" Harriet Blackwell straightened her spine, her chin lifting with defiant pride. "I protected this family. I protected your legacy. That woman was nobody. A waitress's daughter playing at being a doctor. She would have destroyed everything your father built. She was the woman I loved." Remington's voice rose, echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "She was carrying my children. Our children. She was a liability." Harriet spat the word like venom, "and I handled her the way liabilities must be handled." The cathedral erupted in shocked whispers. Guests exchanged horrified glances. Phones began appearing, recording the implosion of one of America's most powerful families. "How?" Remington took a step toward his mother, his hands shaking. "How did you make me believe she had betrayed me?" Harriet's composure finally crumbled. Cornered, exposed, she abandoned all pretense. "Photographs," she admitted, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "I hired someone to create photographs that showed her with another man. I blocked her number from your phone. I intercepted her letters before they could reach you." Remington staggered as if physically struck, and when she ran, Harriet continued, almost defiant now. "When she disappeared before I could ensure she would never resurface, I told you she had died. I showed you a death certificate. I let you grieve so you would move on. You let me grieve." Remington's voice was barely human, torn from somewhere deep and wounded. "You watched me fall apart. You watched me bury myself in work for 17 years. You watched me become cold and empty, and you knew. You knew she was alive. You knew I had children. I knew what was best for this family." The words hung in the air, obscene in their callousness. Jasper watched this exchange with grim satisfaction, but beside him, Griffin had noticed something else. Someone else. At the back of the cathedral, the great doors had opened. A woman stood silhouetted against the late afternoon light. She was thin, her dark hair streaked with gray, her posture uncertain. But she was there. She had come. "Dad." Griffin touched Jasper's arm. "Look." Jasper turned, and his breath caught in his throat. "Mom." Remington followed their gaze. When he saw the woman standing at the entrance of the cathedral, 17 years of grief and loss and hollow success collapsed into a single, devastating moment of recognition. Dell. The name escaped him like a last breath. Delphine Hartley stood frozen in the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes locked on the man she had loved and lost and never forgotten. The twins had arranged this. They had called her that morning, told her where they would be, begged her to come even if only to wait outside, just in case the truth set something free. She had sat in a rental car for 3 hours, unable to decide, unable to breathe, and then she had heard the commotion from inside, heard raised voices, heard her son speaking her truth to the world, and she had found the courage to walk through those doors. Remington moved down the aisle toward her. The guests parted before him like water, too stunned to do anything but watch. His footsteps echoed against the marble. His eyes never left her face. "Del," he said again when he reached her, his voice breaking on her name. "You are alive. You are really alive." Delphine's chin trembled, but she held his gaze. "I am alive, Remington. I have been alive this whole time, raising our sons, alone." The accusation in her words made him flinch, but he did not look away. "I did not know." His voice was raw with grief. "I swear to you, Del, I did not know. My mother showed me photographs. She told me you had been unfaithful. She told me the baby was not mine. And then when you disappeared, she told me you had died." Delphine's eyes glistened with tears she refused to shed. "I tried to tell you the truth. I tried to explain about the photographs, but you would not listen. You looked at me like I was nothing, like everything we had meant nothing. I was wrong." Remington took her hands in his and she let him. "I was so wrong. I should have trusted you. I should have known you would never betray me. But I was young and hurt, and my mother." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Your mother destroyed my life," Delphine said quietly. "She threatened me. She told me she would take my babies away if I ever tried to contact you. So I ran. I hid. I changed my name and disappeared because I was terrified of what she would do." Remington closed his eyes, absorbing the magnitude of what had been stolen from both of them. 17 years, he whispered. "We lost 17 years. Yes." Delphine's voice was steady now. "We did." Behind them, the twins stood watching their parents. This moment they had fought for, planned for, risked everything for. This moment of truth and reckoning. Harriet Blackwell had collapsed back into her pew, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Guests were filming, whispering, some already leaving in scandalized haste, and Cordelia Ashworth stood alone at the altar. With quiet dignity, she removed her veil. She looked at Remington's back, at the woman he was holding, at the young man who bore his face. She saw a truth she had perhaps always sensed but never wanted to acknowledge. Remington had never fully belonged to her. His heart had always been elsewhere, buried with a ghost who turned out to be very much alive. Cordelia walked down the altar steps, her designer gown trailing behind her. She passed the twins without a word, past the reunited couple without a glance, and walked out of the cathedral into the golden light of late afternoon. She deserved better. She deserved someone's whole heart. And she was wise enough to recognize when she did not have it. The following hours were chaos. Lawyers were called. Statements were made. The media descended like vultures, hungry for every detail of the scandal that would dominate headlines for weeks. But amid the chaos, something fragile and precious was taking root. Remington sat with Delphine and the twins in a private room adjacent to the cathedral. Security guarded the doors. Outside, the world clamored for answers. But inside, a family was meeting for the first time. Jasper and Griffin. Remington said their names slowly, tasting the syllables, learning their weight. "My sons." The twins sat across from him, guarded but present. 17 years of wondering, of imagining, of constructing and deconstructing the idea of a father had led to this moment. "Why Jasper and Griffin?" Remington asked quietly. Delphine answered. "Jasper was my grandfather's name. He raised me after my mother died. And Griffin." She paused, a sad smile touching her lips. "You told me once about your grandfather Griffin, the one who taught you to fish when you were a boy. You said he was the only person in your family who saw you for who you really were. I thought if I could not give our sons their father, I could at least give them his name." Remington's composure finally broke. Tears streamed down his face, and he made no move to wipe them away. "I dreamed about you," he confessed, his voice hoarse. "For years after I thought you died, I dreamed about you. I would wake up reaching for you, and you were never there." Delphine's own tears finally fell. "I tried to hate you," she whispered. "For so long I tried to hate you for believing those lies, for not fighting for me. But I could not. Every time I looked at our sons I saw you. And I could not hate the man who gave me them. They were not touching. Too much time had passed for easy intimacy, but their eyes held each other with an intensity that spoke of love that had survived betrayal, separation, and 17 years of grief. "I am sorry," Remington said, and the words seemed wholly inadequate. "I am so sorry for what my mother did, for what I allowed to happen, for every day you struggled alone when I should have been there." Delphine shook her head slowly. "You did not know. I hated you for years, thinking you had chosen your career over us, thinking you had willingly abandoned your children, but you did not know. Your mother made sure of that." Jasper spoke for the first time since they had entered the room. "What happens now?" The question hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty. Remington looked at his son, at both his sons. "Whatever you want," he said simply. "I have no right to ask anything of you. I have missed your entire lives. But if you will let me, if there is any chance." He trailed off, unable to voice the hope that was almost too painful to hold. Griffin looked at his brother, and some wordless communication passed between them. They had discussed this possibility during the long drive to the city. "What if he actually wants us? What if this works? We did not come here for money," Griffin said carefully. "We do not want your fortune or your name or your connections. We came because we deserved the truth. And so did you. And because," Jasper hesitated, his tough exterior cracking slightly, "because we wanted to know. We wanted to know if you were worth knowing." Remington absorbed this, nodding slowly. "I understand," he said, "and I cannot promise I will be a good father. I do not know how, but I want to try. If you will let me, I want to try." The room fell silent. Outside, muffled voices indicated the media circus was still in full swing. Inside, a family hung suspended between past and future. Delphine reached out and took each of her sons' hands. "This is your choice," she said softly. "Whatever you decide, I will support you." Jasper looked at the man who was their father, the man whose eyes he shared, whose stubbornness he had inherited, whose absence had shaped his entire life. "We will try," he said finally, "but slowly. You do not get to just show up and be our dad. You have to earn that." Remington nodded, a small grateful smile touching his lips. "I would not expect anything less." 3 weeks later, Remington Blackwell appeared on the front page of every major newspaper in the country. But this time, the headline was different. "Blackwell CEO resigns, names new leadership, retreats from public life." The article detailed his decision to step back from day-to-day operations at Blackwell Dynamics. It mentioned the wedding scandal, the revelation of his secret sons, the downfall of his mother. It did not mention that he had flown to Copper Ridge, Montana, that very morning. The bakery was smaller than he had imagined. A modest brick building on Main Street with a hand-painted sign that read Delphine's Sweet Creations. The windows displayed an array of pastries, cakes, and cookies that looked like edible art. Remington stood on the sidewalk for 10 minutes, just looking. This was where she had survived, where she had raised their children, where she had kneaded dough at 4 in the morning and frosted cakes until midnight, just to keep her family fed. He thought of his penthouse apartment, his private jets, his summer homes in 3 countries, all the wealth he had accumulated while she struggled. The guilt was almost unbearable. "You can come in, you know." He turned to find Griffin standing behind him, an apron tied around his waist, flour dusting his forearms. "We do not bite," Griffin added with a slight smile. "Well, Jasper might. He is still deciding if he likes you." Remington managed a small laugh. "Fair enough." He followed Griffin into the bakery, and the smell hit him immediately. Warm bread, sweet vanilla, cinnamon and sugar. It smelled like home in a way his sterile penthouse never had. Delphine was behind the counter, boxing up an order for an elderly woman who was clearly a regular. She looked different here, more herself. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Flour streaked her cheek. She was laughing at something the customer had said. She was beautiful. When she saw Remington, her laughter faded but did not disappear entirely. "You came. I said I would. I know. But saying and doing are different things." She handed the box to her customer with a warm smile. "Have a good day, Mrs. Patterson." When the elderly woman had left, casting a curious glance at Remington, Delphine came around the counter. "The boys are in the back," she said. "Jasper is pretending he does not care that you are here. Griffin is slightly less hostile. I will take slightly less hostile," Remington replied. Delphine studied him for a moment. "You look tired." "I have not been sleeping well," he admitted. "Too much to think about." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Come on," she said. "I will make you coffee, and then you can help us prep for tomorrow. We have a wedding cake order." Ironic, I know. The kitchen was cramped and chaotic and nothing like the pristine industrial kitchens Remington was accustomed to. Every surface was covered with ingredients, tools, and works in progress. Jasper stood at a long table, aggressively kneading dough like it had personally offended him. He glanced up when Remington entered. "You showed up." "I did." "Cool." Jasper returned to his kneading, but something in his posture had relaxed slightly. Remington spent the next 6 hours learning how to bake. He was terrible at it. His bread was dense, his frosting was lumpy, and he somehow managed to get more flour on himself than on any actual baked goods. But Delphine was patient, guiding his hands, teaching him techniques she had perfected over 17 years. And somewhere between the third batch of ruined croissants and the fourth attempt at a decent buttercream, something shifted. Jasper laughed at him. It was a real laugh, unguarded and unexpected, when Remington accidentally turned on the mixer at full speed and sprayed batter across the entire kitchen. "Your face!" Jasper gasped between laughs. "You look like a ghost." Remington looked down at himself, covered head to toe in white batter, and started laughing too. Griffin captured the moment on his phone. "This is going on the internet," he declared. "Don't you dare," Remington protested, but he was smiling. Really smiling for the first time in as long as he could remember. In the weeks that followed, Remington became a regular presence in Copper Ridge. He rented a small house at the edge of town. He learned to make sourdough bread that was actually edible. He attended Griffin's art show at the local community center and Jasper's soccer game at the high school. He was terrible at being a father. He did not know how to give advice or set boundaries or any of the things parents were supposed to do instinctively, but he was present. He was trying. And slowly, painfully, walls began to come down. One evening, after a family dinner at Delphine's apartment, Jasper cornered Remington on the small balcony. "I need to ask you something." "Of course." "Anything." Jasper was quiet for a moment, staring out at the Montana stars. "When your mother showed you those fake photographs, when she told you Mom had cheated, did part of you believe it because it was easier?" Remington felt the question like a knife. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Jasper turned to face him, "you were about to become a father. Your whole life was about to change. And then suddenly you had an out, a reason to walk away, a way to keep chasing your ambitions without anything holding you back." The accusation was brutal, and not entirely unfair. Remington considered his answer carefully. "I wish I could tell you that I was completely innocent," he said finally, "that I was purely a victim of my mother's manipulation, but the truth is more complicated." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I was scared. I was 24 years old, and the thought of being a father terrified me. When my mother showed me those photographs, part of me was relieved, because it meant I did not have to grow up yet. I did not have to change." Jasper absorbed this in silence. "But here is the thing," Remington continued. "That relief lasted about 5 minutes, and then the grief hit, and it never went away. Losing your mother. Losing what I thought was our child. It broke something in me. I spent the next 17 years trying to fill that void with work and success, and none of it ever came close." "So you would not have walked away?" Jasper pressed. "If you had known the truth, if my grandmother had not interfered, you would have stayed." Remington met his son's eyes directly. "I would have stayed. I would have married your mother. I would have been there for every moment, and I have to live with the knowledge that I was robbed of that we all were." Jasper nodded slowly. Something in his expression had softened. Okay, I believe you." The words were simple, but they carried immense weight. A crack in the wall, a first step toward real trust. Meanwhile, Harriet Blackwell faced the consequences of her decades of manipulation. Remington had cut all ties with his mother, changed his phone number, removed her from his will, issued a public statement denouncing her actions and expressing his commitment to building a relationship with his sons. Harriet found herself suddenly, shockingly alone. The social circles that had once celebrated her now closed their doors. The power she had wielded so carelessly evaporated. She spent her days in her massive, empty mansion, surrounded by the symbols of wealth that now felt like prison bars. She wrote letters to Remington, dozens of them, explaining, justifying, begging for understanding. He returned them all unopened. "You stole my family from me," he told her during their final conversation. "You stole 17 years of my children's lives. You made me believe the woman I loved was dead. There is no explanation that can undo that. There is no apology that can make it right. We are done, Mother. Forever." Harriet Blackwell learned, too late, that manipulation might win battles but inevitably loses wars. That secrets buried in darkness always find their way to light. that the family she claimed to be protecting was never really hers to control. 1 year later, on a crisp October morning, the residents of Copper Ridge gathered in the small white church on Maple Street. It was a modest affair, handmade decorations, wildflowers in mason jars, a potluck reception in the church basement. Nothing like the elaborate cathedral wedding that had never happened, but it was real. Delphine walked down the aisle in a simple cream-colored dress, her dark hair streaked with silver, her eyes bright with tears of joy. Jasper and Griffin flanked her, one on each arm, walking her toward the man waiting at the altar. Remington watched her approach and felt his heart crack open in the best possible way. She was not the girl he had met in the Stanford library. She was stronger now, more guarded, shaped by years of struggle and sacrifice. But she was still Dell. Still the woman who had seen through his arrogance to the scared boy beneath. Still the woman he had never stopped loving, even when he thought she was gone. The ceremony was brief, simple vows, spoken with trembling voices. A kiss that sealed a promise 17 years in the making. And when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the small congregation erupted in cheers. At the reception, Griffin rose to give a toast. 1 year ago, he began, my brother and I crashed a wedding. We had no idea if it would work. No idea if anyone would believe us. No idea if the man we had spent our whole lives wondering about would even want to know us. He looked at his parents, seated together at the head table, hands intertwined. But we knew we had to try. We knew the truth deserved to be told. And we knew that whatever happened, at least we would finally have answers. He paused, emotion thick in his voice. We got more than answers. We got a father. We got a family. We got the chance to watch our mother finally receive the love she has always deserved. Griffin raised his glass. To second chances. To truth. To finding your way home, no matter how long the journey takes. The guests raised their glasses in response. To second chances. Later that evening, as the reception wound down, Jasper found his father standing alone outside the church, looking up at the stars. Nice speech your brother gave. Griffin always was the articulate one, Jasper admitted. Remington smiled. You know, he said quietly, a year ago I was about to marry the wrong person for all the wrong reasons. I was going through the motions of a life that never really felt like mine. And now I am standing outside a tiny church in a town I had never heard of, married to the woman I should have married 2 decades ago, with 2 sons I did not know existed. Pretty wild turn of events. Remington laughed. That is one way to put it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Dad. Jasper said the word tentatively, testing its weight. Remington turned to look at him, and his eyes glistened. Yes, thanks for not giving up. Even when we made it really hard. Remington put his arm around his son's shoulders. Thank you for having the courage to find me. I would have lived my whole life not knowing. You and your brother. You saved me. Jasper leaned into his father's embrace. We saved each other. Inside, the music had started again. Delphine was dancing with Griffin, laughing as he spun her around the small dance floor. Community members who had watched her struggle for 17 years now celebrated her happiness. Remington and Jasper watched through the window. She deserves this, Jasper said softly. She deserves everything. She does, Remington agreed. And I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure she gets it. They rejoined the party together, father and son, walking into the warmth and light of a family finally made whole. The truth had found its way to light, as truth always does. Secrets buried for 17 years had finally been exposed, and from the wreckage of lies and manipulation, something beautiful had grown. A mother who had sacrificed everything finally received her reward. A father who had lived as a ghost among his achievements finally found substance and meaning. Twin sons who had grown up with questions finally had their answers. And a woman who had thought she could control everything through secrets and manipulation learned that love cannot be manufactured, family cannot be designed, and the truth will always, always find its way free. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Cedar Drama for more powerful stories about love, truth, and redemption. Remember this lesson. The past we cannot change. The lies others tell are beyond our control. But we always, always have the choice to fight for truth, to stand up even when we are afraid, to demand answers even when the powerful want us silent. And sometimes, if we are brave enough, if we fight hard enough, we get more than answers. We get a second chance. We get a family. We get home. Thank you for watching. Until next time, beautiful family.